South Carolina will definitely help. As Bakari Sellers was saying earlier, there are a number of southern states, southeastern states in particular, that are be voting Tuesday, and I think that the Clyburn Biden southern vote is that's a dynamic that is important. And by the way, I do think that there's some others who come out for Biden at the last minute, like Terry McAuliffe and Tim Kaine in Virginia. I think that is going to change the complexion in Virginia. As a general proposition, we've talked very little in these political analyses of how the fact that candidates have so few endorsements among colleagues. I think in the Senate, Pat Leahy is the one endorsement that he has gotten, whereas Joe Biden has got a number of endorsements. That tells you something. It sends a signal to people.
Okay.
And Bernie is trying to direct a movement. He's less interested in having.
David, we're having some problems with your mic, so I want to give our folks a chance to fix that. But I'll ask you this question, and I have some sound as part of it, so hopefully we can get the mic fixed during the sound. But these candidates who we've seen now drop out since South Carolina, Tom Steyer, and what's expected of Pete Buttigieg, there does come the time and the question of, do you get behind someone, right? And a lot of people remember that moment when John McCain finally got behind George Bush after withholding his endorsement for weeks. And in fact, he didn't actually use the word endorse until pressed by reporters to clarify. Let's watch.
Why do you have difficulty using the word endorsement when you talk about your support for Governor Bush?
Does that have to
do with the nature of the project?
Can you say that again? I endorse Governor Bush. I endorse Governor Bush. I endorse Governor Bush. I endorse Governor Bush. I endorse Governor Bush.
Awkward, but better late than never, I guess. What are your thoughts, David, as far as, who and when these candidates who are dropping out decide to make an endorsement?
Well, it would make a big difference if they did it soon. That's particularly true of Pete Buttigieg and Tom Steyer. I think both of them coming out, they could guide something. I don't think that everybody who voted for Buttigieg or was voting for him is necessarily going to go to Biden, but I think he'll get a big chunk of it. And therefore, if you really want to help him, do it soon. Don't do it later. It's too late in about 3 or 4 weeks.
You were once an advisor to Richard Nixon, and he famously picked up the endorsement of basketball legend Will Chamberlain. But do celebrity endorsements typically move the needle?
Listen, anytime Will Chamberlain endorses Richard Nixon, that's news, right? Yeah, and I think that made a difference. Elvis Presley got he used to come in and see Richard Nixon supporting him. There are some odd things that go on with celebrities. The president whom I think got the most help from celebrities was probably John Kennedy, because he was surrounded by them. There was a rapport that he had with people in Hollywood, and it really made a difference in his presidency.
All right, David Gergen, thank you very much. Sorry about the mic issues.
Thanks, Anna.
Great to have you with us.
Not a problem. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. We're staying on top of the coronavirus epidemic, and we have new cases confirmed in the U.S. Dr. Sanjay Gupta will break down what you need to know, as well as the new screening measures when we come back. You're live in the CNN Newsroom.
What do you guys think?
Well, what do we think of what?
I got a brand new polo. Can you smell it? Fresh out of the bag.
Oh, yeah.
A bag, wow.
For sure.
We made USAA insurance for busy veterans like...
You haven't had a break for so long, so you start searching for family vacations.
Mama said, fulfill the prophecy, be something great. Go make a legacy, manifest destiny. Back in the days we wanted everything, wanted everything. Mama said, burn your biographies, rewrite your history, light up your wildest dreams, museum victories. Every day we wanted everything, wanted everything. Mama said, don't give up, it's a little complicated, all tied up, no more love, and I'd hate to see you waiting. Had to have high hopes for a living, shooting for the stars but I couldn't make a killing. Didn't have a dime but I always had a vision, always had high hopes. Had to have high hopes for a living, didn't know how but I always had a feeling I was gonna be that one in a million. Always had high hopes. Mama said, something for oddities, stranger causes. Ain't never wannabes, winning the novelties that don't ever change. We wanted everything, wanted everything. Stay up on that rise, stay up on that rise, never come down. Oh, stay up on that rise, stay up on that rise, never come down. Mama said, don't give up, it's a little complicated, all tied up, no more love, and I'd hate to see you waiting. They say it's all been done, but they haven't seen the best of me. So I got one more run, and it's gonna be a sight to see. Had to have high hopes for a living, shooting for the stars when I couldn't make a killing. Didn't have a dime, but I always had a vision, always had high hopes. Had to have high hopes for a living, didn't know how, but I always had a feeling I was gonna be that one in a million. Always had high hopes. Had to have high hopes for a living, shooting for the stars when I couldn't make a killing. Didn't have a dime, but I always had a vision, always had high hopes. Had to have high hopes for a living, didn't know how, but I always had a feeling I was gonna be that one in a million. Always had high hopes. Had to have high hopes for a living, shooting for the stars when I couldn't make a killing. Didn't have a dime, but I always had a vision, always had high hopes. Had to have high hopes for a living, didn't know how, but I always had a feeling I was gonna be that one.
President Trump announcing new screening procedures for people arriving from high-risk countries when it comes to
Fulfill the prophecy, be something great. Go make a legacy, manifest destiny. Back in the days we wanted everything, wanted everything. Mama said, burn your biographies, rewrite your history, light up your wildest dreams, museum victories. Every day we wanted everything, wanted everything. Mama said,
Who might
don't give
have stepped
up,
aside, but
it's a
maybe won a
little
contest, which Pete
complicated.
Buttigieg did in Iowa. They could always give him a call. Somebody at the DNC still has his number.
Yeah, well, he had 26 pledged delegates so far. Joe Biden has about 50, Bernie Sanders about 58. So he was third in the delegate hunt. But he has, as we say tonight, decided to suspend his campaign. More on that as we get the information. Peter Ducey, thank you. The South Carolina primary sharpened the stakes for the 2020 candidates, and along with Buttigieg, culled another one from the ranks. Billionaire Tom Steyer threw in the towel last night, announcing he is no longer a candidate in the race. Former Vice President Joe Biden came out on top in South Carolina, but Senator Bernie Sanders remains the overall frontrunner. Brian Yennis is live in Columbia, South Carolina with the latest. Brian.
John, good evening. Look, in a memo, Elizabeth Warren's campaign made clear that they are trying to outline a strategy to make a final play for the nomination at the Democratic National Convention in July. And with so many candidates for voters to choose from, the chances of there being a contested convention are high. So what is a contested convention? It means no candidate will have enough delegates to win the nomination by the time the party meets to choose their candidate in Milwaukee on July 13th. A candidate candidate needs a total of 1,991 delegates to win the nomination. That's half plus one of all the delegates available nationwide. Every state has a certain number of delegates. They are awarded on the state level and at the congressional district level. A candidate needs 15% or more of the vote to win any delegates. Delegates are then awarded proportionately to the percentage share of the vote that they win. Now, Sanders is leading the delegate count so far, and he's likely to build on that lead come Super Tuesday, when a third of all delegates are on the table, because all the other candidates are splitting up that remaining anti-Sanders vote. Now, according to 538, which runs a computer model that simulates this primary election thousands of times, the odds are 60% that no one will reach that magic 1991 number by convention time. Sanders has a 26% chance of winning by then, and Biden has a 14% chance. Bloomberg and Warren are at less than 1%. With Mayor Pete Buttigieg now dropping out of the race, he has 25 delegates. It raises the question, what happens to delegates once a candidate drops out? Well, according to the DNC rules, quote, delegates elected to the National Convention pledged to a presidential candidate shall in all good conscience reflect the sentiments of those who elected them. In other words, a candidate decides to whom they want to give their delegates to, and technically, though, those delegates can decide who they want to choose. It's really out of good faith that they stick with their candidate's choice. Bottom line, though, the rules state in order to be declared the winner, you have to have the 1991 magic number. It's not enough just to have the most delegates. And back in 2016, Sanders thought that was right on, and now Sanders isn't really thinking that. Sanders believes is sort of saying that he'd like to go in there and perhaps not have a contested convention and be declared the nominee. So we shall see how messy this will all get. John?
It's going to get interesting. Brian Yennis, thank you. For more on this, let's bring in senior political reporter and federal politics editor for the Center for Public Integrity, Dave Leventhal. Dave, we just heard from Brian that Pete Buttigieg has 25 pledged delegates. And when you look at the list, he was solidly in third place. Bernie Sanders up top with 56. Joe Biden, 48 now after winning South Carolina. Then Buttigieg with 25. And on and on it goes. Warren, Klobuchar, and Bloomberg and so forth. But 25 delegates, nothing to sneeze at. Why do you think he's bailing out now?
He's bailing out because he didn't really see anything going right his way on Super Tuesday. There's going to be a huge delegate haul that's going to happen on Super Tuesday for the Democratic candidates. About a third of the delegates that are going to be available throughout the entire process. And it was entirely possible Pete Buttigieg wasn't going to win a single one of those states, and he probably wasn't going to pick up too many delegates. You got to remember that 15 is sort of the magic number, 15% that you're going to have to get and cross that threshold in order to get some delegates, regardless of whether you're Pete Buttigieg, Bernie Sanders, Joe Biden, or so forth. And in many of those contests, Pete Buttigieg was pulling third or fourth or fifth. Things were looking fairly bleak for him.
But why not go into Super Tuesday and try to grab the delegates you can to give yourself perhaps some more leverage at the convention to steer those delegates to the candidate that you most believe in?
If you take Pete Buttigieg at his word, it's because he does want to, quote, unify the party, and he sees a Joe Biden or somebody who isn't Bernie Sanders being the person to do it. In essence, if he wasn't the one who could do it, then he wants somebody else to do it. And Joe Biden, of course, is coming off a huge South Carolina victory. Joe Biden is polling second or third in many of the states and definitely does have a chance on Super Tuesday to collect a lot of delegates. Maybe not as much as Bernie Sanders, particularly considering that Sanders is doing well in a state like California, which has the biggest delegate haul of them all. But as we talk about brokered conventions, as we talk about multiple ballots, it makes it that much harder for Bernie Sanders to win if he has somebody like a Joe Biden really gobbling up many of those delegates that Bernie Sanders might not get.
We just got this statement from a senior Buttigieg campaign aide who says, Pete believes this is the right thing to do for our country, for our party, and for Americans across the country, eager to heal our divided nation, defeat this president, and work to fix our broken politics. Once again, if you're just joining us, Pete Buttigieg is suspending his campaign for the Democratic presidential nomination. Super Tuesday, 1,357 delegates up for grabs. You need 1,991, I believe, on the Democratic side to win the nomination. So a huge chunk of the total delegates are up for grabs. And I go back to the question. I mean, it seems like Buttigieg must be thinking that Joe Biden is on a bit of a roll now, having won South Carolina, and that if Buttigieg, steps aside, that maybe voters are going to find Biden the more palatable so that they can propel him to the nomination.
Yeah, and that's one side of a two-sided coin. In the sense, pardon me, that it also not only could help Joe Biden, but it could hurt Bernie Sanders. And really, when you're talking about getting to the majority that you need in order to get enough delegates and win the nomination outright, Bernie Sanders, that becomes so much more difficult if he has a lot of countervailing forces, such as a couple of candidates dropping out, where a second choice for voters who support a Pete Buttigieg oftentimes is going to be a Bernie Sanders. You look at some of the recent polls, it's Amy Klobuchar. It's anyone but Bernie Sanders. And as a result, that does hurt Bernie Sanders. It makes it that much more difficult for Bernie Sanders to win the nomination. And kind of as an aside, Pete Buttigieg, he's 38 years old, okay? We could be having a conversation 40 years from now, when he's the age of Bernie Sanders, he could still be running for president again. So he's got a lot of time on his side. This is hardly the last we've heard of Pete Buttigieg, and we might even be hearing him in consideration for the vice presidency or cabinet positions if it ever got to that point.
Dave Leventhal. Dave, thanks for your analysis.
Thank you.
Well, Wall Street is still reeling from a historic sell-off prompted by the coronavirus epidemic worldwide. What's next for the markets as the outbreak continues to spread?
Operation Wonder.
Democrats and commentators.
Who is this?
On the left.
Name some names, sir.
Well,
because this is just.
Mama said, don't give up, it's a little complicated, all tied up, no more love, and I'd hate to see you waiting. Had to have high hopes for a living, shooting for the stars when I couldn't make a killing, didn't have a dime but I always had a vision, always had high hopes. Had to have high hopes for a living, didn't know how but I always had a feeling I was gonna be that one in a million, always had high hopes. Mama said, something for oddities, stranger possess. They never wanna be the winning the novelties that don't ever change. We wanted everything, wanted everything. Stay up on that rise, stay up on that rise, never come down. Oh, stay up on that rise, stay up on that rise, never come down. Mama said, don't give up, it's a little complicated, all tied up, no more love, and I'd hate to see you waiting. They say it's all been done, but they haven't seen the best of me. So I got one more run, and it's gonna be a sight to see. Had to have high hopes for a living, shooting for the stars when I couldn't make a killing. Didn't have a dime, but I always had a vision, always had high hopes. Had to have high hopes for a living, didn't know how, but I always had a feeling I was gonna be that one in a million, always had high hopes. Had to have high hopes for a living, shooting for the stars when I couldn't make a killing. Mama said, don't give up. It's a little complicated. All tied up, no more love. And I'd hate to see you waiting. Had to have high hopes for a living. Shooting for the stars, but I couldn't make a killing. Didn't have a dime, but I always had a vision. Always had high hopes. Had to have high hopes for a living. Didn't know how, but I always had a feeling. I was gonna be that one in a million. Always had
Conspiracy theories are quickly spreading about the coronavirus, but here are the facts. This virus has killed more than 2,900 people.
Ain't ever wanna be the winning the novelties that don't ever change. We wanted everything, wanted everything. Stay up
From 50 in January, the Middle East.
Never come down. Oh, stay up on that rise, stay up on that rise. Never come down. Mama said,
you wouldn't accept an ink?
don't give up. It's a little complicated. All tied up, no more love. And I
Another element to bring down Donald Trump.
Recent Presidential Medal of Freedom recipient Rush Limbaugh, one of many cooking up partisan conspiracy theories about
shooting for the stars where I couldn't make a killing. Didn't have a dime, but I always had a vision. Always had high hopes. Had to have high hopes for a living. Didn't know how, but I always had a feeling. I was gonna be that one in a million. Always had high hopes. Had to have high hopes for a living. Shooting for the stars where I couldn't make a killing. Didn't have a dime, but I always had a vision. Always had high hopes. Had to have high hopes for a living. Didn't know how, but I always had a feeling. I was gonna be that one in a million. Always had high hopes.
Then it comes here and kills millions of people.
Had to have high hopes for a living. Shooting for the stars when I couldn't make a killing. Didn't have a dime, but I always had a vision. Always had high hopes. Had to have high hopes for a living. Didn't know how, but I always had a feeling. I was gonna be that one in a million. Always had high hopes. Mama said, fulfill the prophecy, be something great. Go make a legacy, manifest destiny. Back in the days we wanted everything, wanted everything. Mama said, burn your biographies, rewrite your history. Light up your wildest dreams, museum victories. Every day we wanted everything, wanted everything. Mama said, don't give up. It's a little complicated. All tied up, no more love. And I'd hate to see waiting. Had to have high hopes for a living. Shooting for the stars when I couldn't make a killing. Didn't have a dime, but I always had a vision. Always had high hopes. Had to have high hopes for a living. Didn't know how, but I always had a feeling. I was gonna be that one in a million. Always had high hopes. Mama said, something for oddities, stranger kisses. Ain't ever wanna be the winning the novelties that don't ever change. We wanted everything, wanted everything. Stay up on that rise, stay up on that rise. Never come down. Oh, stay up on that rise, stay up on that rise. Never come down. Mama said, don't give up. It's a little complicated. All tied up, no more love. And I'd hate to see you waiting. They say it's all been done, but they haven't seen the best of me. So I got one more run, and it's gonna be a sight to see. Had to have high hopes for a living. Shooting for the stars when I couldn't make a killing. Didn't have a dime, but I always had a
expensive leggings for them.
Mama said, don't give up, it's a little complicated, all tied up, no more love, and I'd hate to see you waiting. Had to have high hopes for a living, shooting for the stars when I couldn't make a killing, didn't have a dime but I always had a vision, always had high hopes. Had to have high hopes for a living, didn't know how but I always had a feeling I was gonna be that one in a million, always had high hopes. Mama said, something for oddities, stranger cruises, ain't ever wannabes, waiting the novelties that don't ever change. We wanted everything, wanted everything. Stay up on that rise, stay up on that rise, never come down. Oh, stay up on that rise, stay up on that rise, never come down. Mama said, don't give up, it's a little complicated, all tied up, no more love, and I'd hate to see you waiting. They say it's all been done, but they haven't seen the best of me. So I got one more run, and it's gonna be a sight to see. Had to have high hopes for a living, shooting for the stars when I couldn't make a killing. Didn't have a dime, but I always had a vision, always had high hopes. Had to have high hopes for a living, didn't know how, but I always had a feeling I was gonna be that one in a million, always had high hopes. Had to have high hopes for a living, shooting for the stars when I couldn't make a killing. Didn't have a dime, but I always had a vision, always had high hopes. Had to have high hopes for a living, didn't know how, but I always had a feeling I was gonna be that one in a million, always had high hopes.
Delegates on Super Tuesday. The campaign
Had to have high hopes for a living, shooting for the stars when I couldn't make a killing. Didn't have a dime, but I always had a vision, always had high hopes. Had to have high hopes for a living, didn't know how, but I always had a feeling I was gonna be that one in a million, always had high hopes. Mama said, fulfill the prophecy, be something great, go make a legacy, manifest destiny. Back in the days we wanted everything, wanted everything. Mama said, burn your biographies, rewrite your history, light up your wildest dreams, museum victories. Every day we wanted everything, wanted everything. Mama said, don't give up, it's a little complicated, all tied up, no more love, and I'd hate to see you waiting. Had to have high hopes for a living, shooting for the stars when I couldn't make a killing. Didn't have a dime, but I always had a vision, always had high hopes. Had to have high hopes for a living, didn't know how, but I always had a feeling I was gonna be that one in a million, always had high hopes. Mama said, said, don't give up. It's a little complicated. All tied up, no more love. And I'd hate to see you waiting. They say it's all been done, but they haven't seen the best of me. So I got one more run, and it's gonna be a sight to see. Had to have high hopes for a living. Shooting for the stars when I couldn't make a killing. Didn't have a dime, but I always had a vision. Always had high hopes. Had to have high hopes for a living. Didn't know how, but I always had a feeling. I was gonna be that one in a million. Always had high hopes. Had to have high hopes for a living. Shooting for the stars when I couldn't make a killing. Didn't have a dime, but I always had a vision. Always had high hopes. Had to have high hopes for a living. Didn't know how, but I always had a feeling. I was gonna be that one in a million. Always had high hopes.
USAA, what you're made of?
Had to have high hopes for a living. Shooting for the stars when I couldn't make a killing. Didn't have a dime, but I always had a vision. Always had high hopes. Had to have high hopes for a living. Didn't know how, but I always had a feeling. I was gonna be that one in a million. Always had high hopes. Mama said, fulfill the prophecy, be something great. Go make a legacy, manifest destiny. Back in the days we wanted everything, wanted everything. Mama said, burn your biographies, rewrite your history. Light up your wildest dreams, museum victories. Every day we wanted everything, wanted everything. Mama said, don't give up. It's a little complicated. All tied up, no more love. And I'd hate to see you waiting. Had to have high hopes for a living. Shooting for the stars when I couldn't make a killing. Didn't have a dime, but I always had a vision. Always had high hopes. Had to have high hopes for a living. Didn't know how, but I always had a feeling. I was gonna be that one in a million. Always had high hopes. Mama said, something for oddities, stranger crusades. Ain't ever wannabes, waiting the novelties that don't ever change. We wanted everything, wanted everything. Stay up on that rise, stay up on that rise, never come down. Oh, stay up on that rise, stay up on that rise, never come down. Mama said, don't give up. It's a little complicated, all tied up, no more love. And I'd hate to see you waiting. They say it's all been done, but they haven't seen the best of me. So I got one more run, and it's gonna be a sight to see. Had to have high hopes for a living. Shooting for the stars when I couldn't make a killing. Didn't have a dime, but I always had a vision. Always had high hopes. Had to have high Mama said, don't give up. It's a little complicated. All tied up, no more love. And I'd hate to see you waiting. Had to have high hopes for a living. Shooting for the stars, but I couldn't make a killing. Didn't have a dime, but I always had a vision. Always had
You're live in the CNN Newsroom. I'm Anna Tavera in New York. Thank you for staying with us. Our breaking news right now on CNN. Multiple sources and campaign aides confirming Pete Buttigieg, Democratic candidate for president and former mayor of South Bend, Indiana, is suspending his campaign. And joining us now is CNN political correspondent Abby Phillip and senior political commentator and former senior advisor to President Obama, David Axelrod. So Abby, someone senior in the Buttigieg campaign telling CNN today, quote, he studied the math. Bring our viewers up to speed on what we have learned since this initial announcement was made unofficially from the campaign.
That's right, Anna. It is all about the math tonight for not just Pete Buttigieg, but for a lot of these campaigns as they look forward to Super Tuesday when about a third of the delegates are at stake. And sources inside the campaign and close to the campaign tell me they looked at the situation and believed there was no path forward for Pete Buttigieg. He was not going to be able to compete in a way that would make him more likely to be the Democratic nominee. And one of the big concerns that he had, according to a source I spoke to, is that he would stand in the way of a potential stronger candidate being able to cut in to any kind of delegate lead that Senator Bernie Sanders would be able to accumulate on Super Tuesday. Right now, the way that the situation stands is that Bernie Sanders stands to really accumulate a huge haul. And what Buttigieg had been saying on the campaign trail for some time, for several days now, has been that his goal and the goal of all the other candidates ought to be to limit that delegate haul as much as possible. Buttigieg still believes that Sanders' approach, what they call a sort of inflexible approach, is not the right one. And at the end of the day, that is what it came down to. On Saturday, aides talked to reporters and said they believe that in order to be successful on Super Tuesday, they needed to be able to compete everywhere. They needed to be able to get that 15% delegate threshold in as many places as possible. But the problem is when they really looked at the situation, they knew that that was not going to be likely. And then particularly when they looked at what happened in South Carolina, they saw that Buttigieg underperformed his polling in a way that would not bode well for him on Super Tuesday. So all of that played a role. He made that decision today as he was in Alabama and in Georgia. He was in Georgia meeting with former President Jimmy Carter and his wife, and then redirected his plane from Texas, going to South Bend now tonight to, we are hearing, suspend his campaign for president.
David, are you surprised?
No, I think this was inevitable. Pete Buttigieg, if nothing else, what people have learned about him is that he is a guy who thinks with great clarity, and he knows how to read a spreadsheet. And the fact of the matter is that it wasn't there for him. His campaign has been quite remarkable in the sense that he began as an obscure young mayor from a small Midwestern city, openly gay, the first openly gay candidate to run for president. And very few people gave him much of a chance, and he became a top-tier candidate. But he had a plan, and that plan was to win the Iowa caucuses and then to leverage that into perhaps winning the New Hampshire primary and hoping that that would give him a good look in Nevada and South Carolina. Well, he did win the delegates in Iowa, but didn't get the boost off of it because the Iowa results got reported days late, so he didn't get the kind of propulsion he hoped. And in New Hampshire, Amy Klobuchar had a great debate going into New Hampshire, had a little mini surge that deprived him of the ability to beat Bernie Sanders there. He ran very close second there. So really, when those two things happened, a lot of air went out of Pete Buttigieg's balloon. And of course, the great challenge has always been, could he attract minority voters?
Right.
And particularly black voters in South Carolina, which was always going to be a big test for him. When he didn't get the escape velocity that he needed from Iowa and New Hampshire, I think this day inevitable. But the real question to me now is, will he endorse a candidate? Will he endorse Vice President Biden tonight? I think that's what I'll be listening for in these remarks. Clearly, his getting out is meant to aid Biden, and as Abby pointed out, that was apparently the intent. The reason that's important is there are districts in this country where Joe Biden is straddling viability, where Bernie Sanders may be strong, but Joe Biden could get delegates if he gets over 15% of the vote. With Buttigieg out of the race, he should be able to breach that goal in several of these districts where he might not have had Buttigieg not gotten out. But will he take the extra step and endorse him? We'll have to wait and see.
Well, Anna,
there is still. Go ahead, Abby.
Just to jump in here, I've some reporting to the point that David is making. A source told me today that there has been some staff-level contact between the Biden and Buttigieg campaigns today, but that we should not expect an endorsement tonight. But clearly, as David has said, things are sort of seeming to sort of lean in this direction, where the candidate that seems the most likely to put up the strongest fight against Bernie Sanders on Super Tuesday would be Joe Biden. And another source tells Arlette Signs that Biden and Buttigieg have sort of traded voicemails after this news broke tonight. They have not been able to connect, but that is definitely something that we are keeping an ear to the ground on, because, as David says, we're getting to the point now where all of these candidates need to decide, do they put their weight behind one person? And I think that that's going to be a key moment, if or when perhaps that happens between now and Super Tuesday.
David, as Abby's been reporting, it sounds like Buttigieg was concerned about Sanders' candidacy specifically, but given so many states have early voting, especially on Super Tuesday, states like California, millions have already voted. Do you think this is going to hurt Sanders in a couple of days from now?
Well, you're right that California in particular started voting on February 3rd. Some of the other states have early voting as well. And so that distorts the picture a little and may reduce the bounce that Biden gets somewhat. But what's interesting is that in a state like California, the number of the percentage of absentee ballots, of mail-in ballots that have been actually returned is much lower than it has traditionally been. And that suggests that people are waiting to make a judgment about who they're going to vote for. They wanted to see how this race played out. And I expect that you're going to see a lot of late ballots come in, and certainly at the polling place you're going to see people factoring in Buttigieg's exit, factoring in what happened in South Carolina. And the reason this is all important, Anna, is that it may be that there will be no majority for any candidate going into the Democratic convention in 2020 in July. And so the issue here is, can you hold down Sanders' number as the front runner if you're opposed to him, and can Biden stay close to him? And so a decision like this may make that more possible.
David, it's interesting, though, because the president seems to be suggesting that, this is the establishment against an anti-establishment candidate like Bernie Sanders. He's already tweeting about his reaction to Pete Buttigieg leaving the race, saying Pete Buttigieg is out. All of his Super Tuesday votes will go to sleepy Joe Biden. Great timing. This is the real beginning of the Dems taking Bernie out of play. No nomination again. What's your reaction?
My reaction is this is a big project of the Trump campaign and the president himself. They want to drive a rift between Democrats and speak to those very devoted Sanders supporters and suggest to them that the process was somehow rigged against him. The rules are pretty clear that you have to have a majority. 4 years ago, Bernie Sanders argued against the notion that if you just had a plurality but didn't get a majority, that you should still be the nominee, but he's in a different position now. And so Trump is trying to stir that pot. Believe me, if Sanders were nominated, his solicitude for Bernie Sanders would disappear pretty quickly. But, it's pretty clear what they're trying to achieve. And I do think there's a danger for Joe Biden here if he allows himself to become merely a status quo candidate. There are a lot of young idealists who are supporting Bernie Sanders because they feel very strongly about climate change, about income inequality, and some of the things that demand attention in this country. And just saying I'm here to stop Bernie Sanders is not a compelling message. Biden was very good last night, talking about the absence of decency and humanity and empathy, which are his strengths. And I think those are value-laden arguments, not tactical arguments. He should stick to those arguments if he's going to get to where he wants to go. People respond to idealistic, value-laden arguments, not to tactical arguments.
We are learning that Biden and Buttigieg have traded voicemails today. They haven't spoken, as you mentioned, Abby Phillip. Abby, I do wonder, though, about the Bloomberg factor in all of this, because while Buttigieg steps out, Bloomberg's still there. He hasn't even been on the ballot yet. And, you know, there's this conventional thinking that he and Biden will be also taking votes from sort of the same pool out there. How does this, I guess, impact that?
It has impacted the calculus, and a source told me that it did impact Pete Buttigieg's decision because it changed the map for him in a lot of ways. The Bloomberg factor has sort of just added yet another candidate into this race, siphoning votes away from the sort of non-Bernie Sanders category, which has made it much more difficult for him and for other candidates to get a sort of a minimum of 15% in a lot of these states. And on top of, and that's not even, you know, that is in part because he has spent hundreds of millions of dollars in all of these states, drowning out any other messages that could possibly exist. So I think what it does at this moment is it creates a sense of urgency for a lot of these other candidates. They have to make some really tough decisions about whether or not there is value in remaining in this race. You know, our Jeff Zeleny over the weekend reported that there is an argument to be made, for example, for an Amy Klobuchar to remain on the Minnesota ballot, for example. That is her home state, she is potentially poised to do very well there. And if she does do well there, she could take a majority of delegates or a large portion of delegates such that it would cut into Bernie Sanders' delegate lead. So there are some of these tactical decisions that people are making about what value can I add in terms of the delegate map and where am I subtracting. And I think in a lot of these other states, Pete Buttigieg's home state is not on the Super Tuesday calendar. And when we're looking at the big delegate hauls in Texas and in California, it becomes a real problem, I think, for a lot of these candidates if there are, you know, 4 or 5 of them accumulating votes but not accumulating any delegates. And what that will mean is that whoever does accumulate more than 15%, or, you know, if Bernie Sanders is at 30%, he could get a lion's share of the delegates and then he could run away with this nomination. That is the concern that some of these other candidates have on a strategic level right now.
You mentioned Klobuchar, and while she might stay in this race in order to win Minnesota, perhaps, Bernie Sanders won Minnesota last time around in 2016 when he was up against Hillary Clinton. We also have Elizabeth Warren and Massachusetts sort of in that same boat, right, where she'll be competing in her home state come Super Tuesday. I do wonder, David, about her candidacy, because we've talked about in the past how when you look at the demographics in the polling, some of the same demographics who were supporting Pete Buttigieg also, you know, were the same people that were splitting, you know, that level of support with Elizabeth Warren. So do you think she, too, would see a boost out of this?
Yes, they were competing for college, particularly college-educated white voters,
right.
And she might pick up a point or two here. Look, both she and Amy Klobuchar are faced with the reality that they have not finished higher than third in any of these contests. They did poorly yesterday. Elizabeth Warren has more encouragement from some of the national polling, but not that enough to suggest that she would be really competitive moving forward. And I think a lot of people are going to have to make some very, very tough assessments come Wednesday morning, not the least of which is Michael Bloomberg. He's invested $500 million in this race, much of it into Super Tuesday, but with the boost that Biden got in South Carolina, it's very possible that Bloomberg will finish a distant third on Super Tuesday. And he pronounced himself as a candidate who was running to provide a center-left kind of alternative to the Sanders candidacy, and it was based on a belief that Biden would fail coming out of the first 4 contests. Now that hasn't happened, he's going to have to sit down on Wednesday morning, see where he's at. And if he finishes well behind Biden, whether it's worth investing further in his campaign or whether he might throw in with Biden in this campaign. So a lot of very, very tough decisions are going to be made, I suspect, in the next few days. Pete Buttigieg is leading the way here, but others are going to have to make similar decisions.
Well, of course, Tom Steyer also ended his campaign just last night.
Yes,
David
exactly.
Axelrod and Abby Phillip, really appreciate both of you being here. Thank you.
Good to be with you.
So with Pete Buttigieg out, how are other campaigns responding? We have reaction next. Plus, Buttigieg is expected to speak live in the next hour from South Bend, Indiana. We will bring that to you live right here in the CNN newsroom. Don't go anywhere.
The difficult part for me was starting. I've lost about 20 pounds, which blows my mind.
The psychology aspect of Noom was different than I'd ever seen before.
Noom helped me make a couple of lifestyle changes that made achieving that goal very easy. It's a whole mentality change. Now I've lost 10 pounds.
Down 22 pounds.
57 pounds. That's a lot of weight.
Just to know that you feel yourself again, it makes me so happy and proud. Visit Noom.com and change your life.
Our breaking news tonight, Pete Buttigieg, the former mayor of South Bend, Indiana, is now out of the 2020 race, expected to make an announcement in the next hour. I want to get to CNN's Rebecca Buck in Norfolk, Virginia. She is where Joe Biden is rallying his supporters this evening there in Norfolk. Now, Rebecca, what might this news mean for Biden's camp? We know the two men exchanged voicemails today.
That's right. So you would expect that this is going to be good news for Joe Biden, who has been struggling to consolidate what you might call the anti-Bernie Sanders vote in the Democratic primary. And this will help clarify for Democratic voters who maybe don't want to support Bernie Sanders, who is going to be the strongest option for them. And obviously, this could not come at a better time for Joe Biden as he rides this wave after his victory yesterday in South Carolina, a victory much larger than many people predicted and certainly most of the polling predicted. I don't know if you can hear behind me, but the crowd of supporters who are awaiting Biden here in Norfolk, Virginia are singing along, saying, "Ain't no stopping us now." It gives you a sense of the buoyant feeling among Biden's supporters at this moment. They sort of feel like they have a lease on life and on this campaign. The question, of course, is can they close the deal with voters on Super Tuesday? They now have this opportunity to appeal to people who maybe were looking at former Mayor Pete Buttigieg and now have this opening to choose someone else. It's an open question as to whether Buttigieg will endorse Biden. Of course, as you mentioned, they have traded voicemails, and Buttigieg has been outspoken that he believes Sanders is not the right choice in this campaign. Our CNN reporting also suggesting that that was a consideration for him, that he did not want to help Sanders on Super Tuesday consolidate delegates in those contests. And so we'll see if he is explicit about coming out and supporting Biden or maybe just vouching his support for a more moderate direction for the party. But certainly a very upbeat mood here as we await the former vice president. We'll see if he comments on the former mayor of South Bend, Pete Buttigieg's decision. We are awaiting that comment, and of course we'll keep you updated from here in Norfolk, Virginia.
Okay, Rebecca Buck, we'll check back. Thank you. I want to take you now to CNN's Paul Verkaman in Los Angeles. And Paul, you're standing by at an upcoming Sanders event. What are you hearing about all this from the Sanders campaign?
Well, I'll tell you right now, Anna, they are ramping up for a next-level rally here at the Convention Center. In a little while here, we will have Public Enemy without Flava Flav, but we will have Chuck D and others here. We'll hear from Sarah Silverman, and we'll also hear from Dick Van Dyke. More on that in just 1 second. The Sanders campaign blanketing California right now. They say they've knocked on 1 million doors. They say they've made 5 million phone calls. Now, this effort to get a bigger cross-cut of voters, they believe if they can do that here in California, they could deliver a heavy blow to their rivals. So Dick Van Dyke of Mary Poppins fame has gone to Twitter. He's 94 years old, and he's telling older voters why they should vote for Sanders.
I don't think age really is a matter, except for his experience and the years he's put in. And I can't understand why, according to the polls, he's having problems with older citizens like me. Why wouldn't an older citizen vote for somebody with that kind of a record and with that kind of experience and honesty and trust? It just doesn't make sense to me. He's not getting my generation. And I want to urge my generation to get out and vote for him. Please.
And we're going to hear from Van Dyke and others in just a little while here. They expect that they could have as many as 15,000 people pour into here. And if we're talking about older voters, something to think about, Chuck D of Public Enemy will turn 60 later this year. Anna?
Paul Verkaman in Los Angeles, thank you. And as we go to break, here was Pete Buttigieg announcing on a plane a change of travel plans this evening to go to South Bend for a speech to announce he is suspending his campaign.
A little bit of news for you about our flight. We're making a change in our travel plans and traveling to South Bend rather than to Texas. We're going to be making an announcement there about the future of the campaign and looking forward to sharing with our supporters and with the country where we're going from here. So that is why you will find that we are headed in a different direction than we were originally planned on.
What are you getting out of the campaign?
I'm looking forward to making an announcement tonight to the country.
Pete Buttigieg's decision to end his presidential bid only fueling Joe Biden's momentum following his big South Carolina victory. That's got to be weighing on Michael Bloomberg's campaign tonight. CNN business and politics reporter Christina Alessi joins us now. Christina, talk to us about Bloomberg's strategy now with just 2 days until Super Tuesday. And do you suspect the Buttigieg announcement changes anything?
I think it may help the Bloomberg campaign, or that's the way at least they'll spin it. But as far as Michael Bloomberg going forward, look, now the pressure is on. Super Tuesday is the first time that Michael Bloomberg is going to be on the ballot. It is a huge test for him. And to your point, it's an even bigger test given the fact that Joe Biden had a very strong finish in South Carolina. As you remember, Michael Bloomberg's whole case for running is because Joe Biden was weak. He was struggling in debates. He was struggling for fundraising. That argument has been undermined now. And let's keep in mind, if Michael Bloomberg doesn't perform well on Super Tuesday, he himself will face pressure to step aside and let support coalesce around a moderate candidate. I asked Michael Bloomberg about that on Friday. He said he has no intention of stepping back, even if Super Tuesday doesn't produce the kind of results he wants. And I also asked him if he's worried about fracturing the moderate vote. Listen.
Super Tuesday.
Yep.
If you lag behind Joe Biden, what are you going to do? If you lag significantly
well, I've got
behind?
to be. I'm heading out to campaign in a whole bunch of cities. There's an election 7 days later. That's what I'm going to do.
So you heard it from the horse's mouth there. Michael Bloomberg does not think about, at this point, is not thinking about stepping aside, even if if he doesn't meet his expectations on Super Tuesday, Anna.
All right, Christina Alessi on the trail with Bloomberg campaign. Thank you. Joining us now is CNN senior Washington correspondent Jeff Zeleny. And Jeff, you're learning new details about Pete Buttigieg's speech tonight. What can you tell us?
Anna, good evening. We are expecting to hear the former mayor of South Bend, Indiana, really give a big valedictory of he believes that he was in this race for the right reasons, but we're told that he is not going to, at least not expected to, endorse a candidate in this race. He has, of course, kept his eye on the ball here. And we talked with him on Friday, actually, and I asked him, what his thought process is going forward here. And he said, look, it's clear that the majority of Democrats want someone other than Senator Sanders, but it's clear that Democrats need to coalesce behind them. So clearly, his camp has been in sort of loose conversations with the Biden campaign, but the two men themselves have not spoken. So we do not expect an endorsement this evening. That could come, of course, down the road, but that is essentially where this is heading. Look, I think when you sort of take stock of this entire campaign over the last year or so, what an improbable rise he had. Building that campaign in Iowa and then getting, something he could not have expected was that, complicating bump with the Iowa caucuses, not getting the full launch out of Iowa because of the delay in counting the votes. So that is something that impacted his candidacy. But he was very clear-eyed in assessing his way forward. I'm told that he has been thinking about this for several days, made the decision today that this simply was not going to be mathematically possible. He has a huge future ahead of him, and that's what his speech tonight, of course, will focus on as well. But Anna, the headline, not expecting to endorse a candidate heading into Super Tuesday here. We'll see if he does going forward. But we should put a point in this. I mean, this is someone who, outlasted many senators who had huge name recognition coming into this campaign. Cory Booker, Kamala Harris, Kirsten Gillibrand, many governors. So certainly he has a lot to be proud of here as he ends this campaign. And he wanted to make the decision before Super Tuesday to not be viewed as any type of a spoiler here. But we are not expecting an endorsement. Anna.
That is really interesting and surreal, really, to think that the winner of the Iowa caucuses didn't make it to Super Tuesday. Is that more proof Iowa isn't a great barometer?
It's complicated because Iowa was so muddled this year. It was such a mess this year in terms of not getting a clean win out of there. But look, this is a very crowded field. A lot of ifs here, and his campaign will be asking this for a long time. His advisors already have been. If he had gotten a clean launch out of Iowa, could he have won the New Hampshire primary? Would that have given him a bigger censor? But the reality is he was unable to expand his base of supporters, unable to expand into diverse voters and things. So I think it's hard to say that Iowa wasn't important. I think it's pretty likely to say that Iowa will not play this role 4 and 8 years from now here. But Pete Buttigieg's campaign, of course, planted a lot of their efforts on Iowa. But tonight, this campaign comes to an end. Anna.
And quickly, if you will, Jeff, do you have a sense of where his supporters will go, even though he's not endorsing somebody?
It's a great question. I think it's sort of an anyone but Sanders campaign. He has been arguing that Medicare for all is not possible, arguing, certainly more moderate positions. So I think at this point would likely to go to Joe Biden. But these are individual decisions. And we should point out thousands and millions of early votes have already been made here.
Yep.
So that is something also a factor. Anna.
All right, Jeff Zeleny, thank you very much.
Sure.
Remembering a pivotal moment in the civil rights movement on this 55th anniversary of Bloody Sunday, my conversation with Congressman John Lewis.
We made USAA insurance for veterans like Kate. When she got a new car for bigger projects, she quickly updated her policy on the USAA app and said, done. USAA, what you're made of, we're made for.
These words today from civil rights icon John Lewis. We must go out and vote like we have never, ever voted before. Congressman Lewis spoke those words in Selma, Alabama today, the place where an enormous American turning point happened 55 years ago this week on the Edmund Pettus Bridge. Lewis, witness to and victim of the violence in Selma that day in 1965. He stood on that bridge today despite his recent diagnosis of stage 4 pancreatic cancer, and he urged people to be part of the political process unfolding right now.
55 years ago, a few of God's children attempted to march from Brown Chapel AME Church across this bridge. We were beaten, we were tear gassed. I thought I was going to down this bridge, but somehow, in some way, God Almighty helped me here. We cannot give up now. We cannot give in. We must keep the faith, keep our eyes on the prize. We must go out and vote like we never, ever voted before. Some people gave more than a little blood. Some gave their very lives. So I say to each and every one of you, especially you young people, the fraternities and sororities, you look good. You look colorful. Go out there. Speak up. Speak out. Get in the way. Get in good trouble. Necessary trouble. And help redeem the soul of America. Thank each and every one of you. I'm not going to give up. I'm not going to give in. I'm going to continue to fight. We need your prayers now more than ever before. Let's do it. We can do it. Selma is a different place. America is a different place. But we can make it much better. We must use the vote as a nonviolent instrument or tool to redeem the soul of America. Thank you very much. Good to see you.
Shortly after those remarks, John Lewis spoke those words on that iconic bridge in Selma, and I had a chance to speak to him by phone. I wanted to know why, given his illness and so much happening in his life right now, he felt it was so important to be there today.
I'm doing well. I'm feeling good, stronger and stronger every day.
That is wonderful to hear. Tell us why it was so important for you to be on that bridge today.
Well, 55 years ago, I gave a little blood on that bridge. And I felt that I should come back and be here with the people. Because there's still hundreds, thousands, and millions of people in America that have been left out and left behind. People voting rights are being abused or denied. People are still standing in long lines when it comes to register or when it comes to vote. And we must make it simple and easy for people to participate in the democratic process.
In your memoir, you wrote about your experience in 1965. Quote, if there was ever a time in my life for me to panic, it should have been then, but I didn't. I remember how strangely calm I felt as I thought, this is it. People are going to die here. I'm going to die here. What was it like to be back on that bridge in Selma today?
It was very moving to be back on the bridge today, to see hundreds and thousands of young people with their mothers, their fathers, their grandparents, great-grandparents, to see black and white people, Hispanics, and others standing together, marching together, walking together, to not forget what happened and how it happened.
In your remarks, you talked about the importance of voting. You said, quote, vote like you've never voted before. What did you mean by that?
I simply meant that we have the power to change things. And the vote is the most powerful, nonviolent instrument or tool we have in a democratic society. And we must use it. If we fail to use it, we will lose it.
You also spoke about redeeming the soul of America. What does that look like?
We got to make America better for all of her people. But no one is left out or left behind because of their race, their color, because of where they grew up or where they were born. We are one people. We are one family. We all live in the same house. That's the American house.
But what do you see as the next step? Because you spoke on the bridge about how times are different today than they were in 1965, thank goodness, and yet there's more progress to be made, right? What do you see as the next step?
We got to continue to see that all of our young people, all of our children receive the best possible education. We got to see that people are able to move up and not stay down. We must continue to say we must respect the dignity and the worth of all of our citizens. We live in a strange period. I lived and grew up during the days of different presidents. And I met with presidents. I got to know President Kennedy, met with him twice. There was a greater sense of hope, a greater sense of optimism. And we must find a way to inject into the very vein of America that sense of hope, that sense of optimism for all of our citizens.
What gives you hope today?
I am very hopeful and very optimistic that we're going to work everything out. It's the feeling that the changes that I continue to witness in so many different parts of America. And the American people want us to be hopeful, to be optimistic, and to lead them to a better place, to a better time. And that's what we must do.
Finally, what is your message to any young potential John Lewis out there today trying to make whatever it is they do count and make a better, more equal, more just life for those that are in the future generations?
I would say to young people to be bold, be brave, be courageous, never become bitter or hostile, never hate, or as Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said on so many occasions, hate is too heavy a burden to bear. The way of love is a much better way.
It was a beautiful message. Congressman John Lewis, thank you very much for taking the time. We all wish you the very, very best in your continued health battle with cancer, sending you lots of thoughts and prayers. Thank you for sharing your thoughts and your strength with us today.
Well, thank you very much.
destiny. Back in the days we wanted everything, wanted everything. Mama said, burn your biographies, rewrite your history, light up your wildest dreams, museum victories. Every day we wanted everything, wanted everything. Mama said.
Long before the royal drama surrounding Prince Harry and his wife Meghan Markle, there was another royal scandal, one involving Queen Elizabeth's younger sister, Princess Margaret, and a married man. Princess Margaret's scandal rocking the British tabloids for years. And Queen Elizabeth's sister wasn't the only royal problem among the Windsor family. Soon a second scandal was brewing behind closed doors involving the Queen's husband, Prince Philip. Here's a preview of tonight's new episode of The Windsors Inside the Royal Dynasty.
Before we are willing to do our part of this agreement, including coming to the table with every sector of Afghanistan.
I think I believe that if Bernie Sanders gets the nomination, he will lose to Donald Trump. He will make sure that the Senate stays in Republican hands. He will flip the House back to the Republicans, and even down ballot, he's going to hurt the Democrats.
Has Mike Bloomberg's presence in this race made Bernie Sanders' path to the nomination easier?
I'm not sure about that, but I know that Mayor Bloomberg's record has kind of destroyed his campaign. When you have a billionaire who's advocating against raising the minimum wage, advocating for cuts to Social Security, terrorizing communities of color in his own city, it is his own record that has really caused him destruction.
But
and
don't
then
you
for our campaign,
don't you benefit from the moderate lane splintering in so many directions?
I would argue to you that even the contrast with Joe Biden is one that we welcome. I think from our perspective, in Bernie Sanders, you have somebody who's cautioned against the power of billionaires in our economy, and it is Mike Bloomberg, a billionaire himself, who is trying to buy an election. But then it's Joe Biden, who's got 60 billionaires contributing to his campaign. So I think, in many ways, all of these candidates help posit Bernie Sanders as unique and different than all the others.
All right, Faz Shakir, I'm sure that both supporters and opponents of Bernie Sanders would agree with your description that he certainly stands out from the rest of the field. Thank you very much for your time, sir. We're going to have much more of my interview with Michael Bloomberg coming up next hour. And as we go to break, just in tonight, the governor of New York confirming the first positive case of coronavirus. According to the governor, the patient is a woman in her late 30s who contracted the virus while traveling abroad in Iran and is currently isolated in her home. The patient has respiratory symptoms but is not in serious condition and has been in a controlled situation since she arrived in New York. We're going to have more on that story coming up in our next hour. And we're awaiting live remarks from Mayor Pete Buttigieg as he suspends his campaign. Much more KCDC coming up in just a minute.
Now, we know the Trump strategy: try to win by attacking, distorting, dividing. Mr. President, it won't work.
Newspapers report Bloomberg is the Democrat Trump fears most. As president, universal health care that lets people keep their coverage if they like.
It's just an insatiable appetite.
And of course, I have more questions because of that reason, but we're short on time.
I'm updating my style.
Stay up on that rise, never come down. Oh, stay up on that rise, stay up on that rise, never come down. Mama said, don't give up, it's a little complicated. All tied up, no more love, and I'd hate to see you waiting. They say it's all been done, but they haven't seen the best of me. So I got one more run, and it's gonna be a sight to see. Had to have high hopes for a living, shooting for the stars when I couldn't make a killing. Didn't have a time, but I always had a vision, always had high hopes. Had to have high hopes for a living, didn't know how, but I always had a feeling I was gonna be that one in a million. Always had high hopes. Had to have
If you write
had to have high hopes for a living, for the stars when I couldn't make a killing. Didn't have a time, but I always had a vision, always had high hopes. Mama said, fulfill the prophecy, be something greater. Go make a legacy, manifest destiny. Back in the days we wanted everything, wanted everything. Mama said, burn your biographies, rewrite your history, light up your wildest dreams, museum victories. Every day we wanted everything, wanted everything. Mama said, don't give up, it's a little complicated. All tied up, no more love, and I'd hate to see you waiting. Had to have high hopes for a living, shooting for the stars when I couldn't make a killing. Didn't have a time, but I always had a vision, always had high hopes. Had to have high hopes for a living, didn't know how, but I always had a feeling I was gonna be that one in a million. Always had high hopes. Had to have Mama said, something for oddities, stranger crusaders. Ain't ever wanna be the weird in the novelties. Don't ever change, we wanted everything.
This is CNN Breaking News.
I want to welcome our viewers in the United States and around the world. You are live in the CNN newsroom. I'm Ana Cabrera in New York, and breaking news right now on CNN, the field of Democrats running for the White House shrinking yet again. Multiple sources and multiple campaign aides now confirming Pete Buttigieg, the former mayor of South Bend, Indiana, is suspending his campaign tonight. We are standing by right now for his formal announcement. In South Bend tonight, CNN will bring you that announcement live as it happens. It should happen within the next half hour, we are told. But listen to what Buttigieg told reporters on board his campaign airplane just a short time ago.
A little bit of news for you about our flight. We're making a change in our travel plans and traveling to South Bend rather than to Texas. We're going to be making an announcement there about the future of the campaign, and looking forward to sharing with our supporters and with the country where we're going from here. So that is why you will find that we are headed in a different direction than we were originally planned on.
What are you getting out of the campaign?
I'm looking forward to making an announcement tonight to the country.
Joining us now, former Democratic presidential candidate and CNN political commentator Andrew Yang. He's on the phone with us. First, your reaction.
Well, Anna, this is a big announcement, but it's not a complete surprise, in part because it's the right decision. And Pete became a top-tier contender out of relative anonymity because he makes the right decision. Super Tuesday is just essentially hours away, and Pete was unlikely to post a win in any of the states. He didn't have a funding path forward, and so he looked at the path ahead and said that dropping out would be the best decision for the party, for his team, and for the country. And so I applaud this decision because I think Pete is doing it for all the right reasons. I think it's actually a tremendous boost for those who want to defeat Donald Trump in the fall.
But where do you see his supporters going?
You have to see the vast majority of his support going to Joe Biden. This is a major boost for Joe Biden going into Super Tuesday. Pete was polling in let's call it the 8 to 12% range, depending upon the state, and most of those votes are going to go straight to Joe. A few might go to Mayor Bloomberg, but this cannot be seen as anything other than a major boost for Joe Biden heading into Super Tuesday.
Now, we understand the two have exchanged voicemails today, although they haven't had a chance to actually connect. I know you haven't made an endorsement yet. Our understanding is the former mayor is not expected to make an endorsement tonight when he makes his announcement in the next hour. But, I mean, if he is concerned about Sanders' campaign, and our reporting is that that is largely what impacted his decision here, that he was unwilling to be one reason that Senator Bernie Sanders is able to get an insurmountable lead, according to our sources. Given there are other moderate candidates still in the race, Amy Klobuchar, for example, Michael Bloomberg, another example, would it be beneficial for him to make an endorsement before Super Tuesday?
Well, having been through this process, Anna, there are so many people that help you in your campaign, and you want to honor the conclusion of your campaign. It's almost like you can't really do both things at once and do them appropriately, in my experience. I mean, this is going to be very, very hard news for many, many people who've been supporting Pete for the last number of months. And I think it's entirely right for him to address them and focus on the campaign first, end its conclusion, and then turn his attention to the other candidates who are still in the race.
What do you see as his influence on this race going forward?
Well, certainly Pete has garnered tremendous support around the country. I do think most of his support will naturally flow to Joe. But if Pete were to decide to endorse, of course, it'd be very meaningful. He raised tens of millions of dollars from Americans around the country. And I think that the people that supported him would be thrilled to see Pete campaign for someone else if Pete decided to do so.
Andrew Yang, I do want to ask you, because you were somebody who, has provided more diversity in this race, and now we have another person who brought that diversity into the race dropping out. We're left with three men. The youngest now is 77 years old. That is Joe Biden. And of course, we also have a couple of women still in the race, Amy Klobuchar and Elizabeth Warren competing. But are you surprised this is where we are right now?
Unfortunately, Anna, I think we can all see where this race is trending. So I'm not sure I can say I'm surprised. I do think that for a variety of reasons, many people want to see the field consolidate as much as possible very quickly, essentially into Bernie and then one other non-Bernie candidate. So that dynamic is going to continue. To me, the major variable is Mike Bloomberg. What is his plan? There was some thought that he might even make a decision heading into Super Tuesday, even though the voting hasn't really started in terms of the states that Mike is competing in. That, to me, is the major, major variable in everything, because Mike's bankroll enables him to be competitive anywhere he wants to be. He hasn't been able to reach certain percentages in the polls, but he's competitive just about everywhere. So to me, that is the major decision ahead for the field, really what Mike's dashboard tells him is the right thing to do.
All right, Andrew Yang, really appreciate your insights. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Anna.
I want to bring in CNN senior Washington correspondent Jeff Zeleny, also our political correspondent Abby Phillip, and senior editor for The Atlantic Ron Brownstein, assistant editor for The Washington Post David Swerdlick, and former South Carolina State Representative Bakari Sellers. Everybody, thank you for being here. Yeah. Jeff, you interviewed Pete Buttigieg just a couple of days ago. Did you pick up any indicators that an end to his campaign was so close?
Anna, we did. We talked with Mayor Buttigieg on Friday in Charleston, South Carolina, and there was a sense for him that he was looking at this in a very pragmatic way, as he has done throughout the course of his campaign. He could see what was coming, and he said, look, there is a sense that the Democratic primary is, the majority, he believes, is looking for someone other than Senator Sanders. And he said just the mathematics of this shows that something has to change in this race. But at that point, he said, look, I am the only one who is outpaced Bernie Sanders in the state of Iowa. So he said, I have the largest standing in this. But he said it is up to the voters to decide this, not the candidates. So, of course, there was a sense that in the next day when Joe Biden was expected to win South Carolina, and he did win South Carolina, convincingly so, that Pete Buttigieg would no longer be in the driver's seat. So since then, there has been a sense, talking to his advisors, that he wanted to end this campaign on a high note. He wanted to end this campaign on a positive note and not fight to the end because, of course, he has a long political future here ahead of him. He's 38 years old, and what a remarkable run he did have. But you could get the sense from talking to him, from seeing his final rallies, that he knew the end was likely to be close. And I'm told right now there is a donor call going on with some of his top donors. And the question is, even if he does not endorse tonight, will the donors be given a sense to move over to another campaign, likely the Biden campaign? And that is something the Biden campaign needs desperately, are new donors, a new infusion of cash and investment here. So that's something we're watching tonight.
I'm sure any of the campaigns would welcome his supporters and his donors. Sure. Bakari, as somebody who knows personally Buttigieg, how difficult do you think this decision was for him?
Well, I mean, it's not just difficult for Pete, but it's difficult for all of those people who have been helping out Pete Buttigieg throughout his campaign. I mean, I was looking at a tweet from Congressman Clyburn's grandson, AC in South Carolina, who was an integral supporter for Pete Buttigieg, and just watching his tweet talking about how much he cared for Pete. Pete brought a lot of people into this process. I've been somebody who's really critical of Pete Buttigieg, but one of the things that I always tell people is I have a great deal of respect for his acumen. He was politically nimble, and he represented history. And I have to say it again. I said it earlier to you, and I have to say it now. Pete Buttigieg is not the future of the Democratic Party. He is the right now of the Democratic Party. And so my hat goes off to him. And Pete created stars. I mean, for those all of us that are sitting in these little boxes on TV, we all know Liz Smith. We all know Liz. We have a great deal of respect for Liz. But Liz actually took a small-town mayor to someone who was the winner of the Iowa caucus. And so I think that as we watch Pete in front of all of these American flags tonight, we have to admire his strength, his perseverance, and what he did for the political process. I'm going to miss Pete for his efforts in trying to engage African-American voters, watching his growth on the trail. He didn't hit that note. And let me just point out lastly, I know Ron probably will help me or critique me on my numbers, but CD won last night. It was Joe Cunningham's congressional district. Many of us thought that Pete Buttigieg was going to be able to get a delegate or a couple of delegates out of that congressional district. By not being able to even pull that off, I think that sealed his fate as a presidential candidate.
I want to play just a portion of the last interview Buttigieg gave to CNN. This was on Friday, just 2 days ago.
At what point is this about finding a stronger nominee versus a candidate's own ego?
Well, the only reason that you ought to run for president in the first place is to make yourself useful to your country. And every time I've made a decision to run for office, and every time I've made a decision to not run for an office, it's been about looking at where I could make the biggest difference.
You say right now, what process will you go through post-Super Tuesday to assess your way forward?
Well, of course, we will be looking closely at the results of the delegate count and making sure that we have the right path forward in a calendar that actually becomes more favorable for us as we go deeper into March and April. So I'm very optimistic about the road ahead and think that we'll continue to have a very strong position moving toward a win.
Ron, how do you explain this dramatic shift in just 2 days?
The reality of Pete Buttigieg's biggest flaw as a candidate, his inability to break through among voters of color. was really underscored in South Carolina as among African Americans as it was in Nevada among Latinos. And if you can't do that, you ultimately can't be the nominee. Buttigieg was a very competitive candidate among white voters with a pretty broad base of support, both economically, education-wise, and age. But he was never able to get over that hurdle. He's obviously, as Jeff Zeleny said, someone with a big future in the Democratic Party. But I think one thing to kind of keep in mind here is that he is the centrist end of the millennial Democrats at a time when Bernie Sanders is dominating among younger voters, among millennials and post-millennials. And I think, if you kind of look beyond this race, I mean, it's going to be fascinating to watch Pete Buttigieg, I think, emerging as a leader on the centrist part of that against others who will be much more identified with the left end of the millennial generation, like AOC. But in the near term, this probably helps Biden more than anybody else. But I don't think it's guaranteed that all of his voters flow there by any means. Biden is still struggling with blue-collar white voters. And some of those who were for Buttigieg, again, was competitive among kind of all strata of white voters. And I think it's no guarantee that Biden can corral those. He's going to have to work for that.
So Abby, an aide tells us, quote, he's getting out for the same reason he got in. He believes we need to beat Donald Trump and that we need to make sure we have the strongest candidate possible to do it. That is a quote. Who is that candidate?
That is the big question. But I mean, frankly, all signs point to that candidate being Joe Biden. One of the factors going into this for Buttigieg and frankly for his staff is that if you look at what has happened over the first 4 contests, he's in 3rd place right now. There are candidates who have placed more poorly than he did, Elizabeth Warren, Amy Klobuchar, Tulsi Gabbard, who are still in this race. And I think that's what has made this decision so difficult. But that's also why I think his aides believe that it's so important for him to step out now to sort of lead the way on this, because his rationale for several days and weeks now has been that there needs to be a sort of other alternative to the sort of center left, the sort of progressive left in Bernie Sanders, a more center left candidate of the likes of a Joe Biden or a Buttigieg or an Amy Klobuchar. If it wasn't going to be him, and it's probably not going to be an Amy Klobuchar because she still hasn't even done as well as even Pete Buttigieg did, then the only possibility is Joe Biden. It's one of the reasons, I think, why I'm told that the phone calls that were exchanged between Buttigieg and Biden tonight, they did not connect as of right now. But Buttigieg made that call to Biden in part out of respect to him, I'm told. And I think that we heard even last night, I was at his rally in Raleigh, North Carolina last night. And, Joe Biden emerged from South Carolina, the clear sort of winner of that race. He is, for Buttigieg, the person that he would have to sort of bring down in order to rise. We did not see Pete Buttigieg take on Joe Biden last night. I think that was not by accident. It was in part because there's a clear sense in his campaign and with Buttigieg personally that the person who is most like him ideologically is going to have to be a Joe Biden type figure. So we should really be looking for that as we go forward. I think for the candidates who believe that they want a different kind of politics from what Bernie Sanders is offering, this moment is so important for them because it's going to require some of them to take a step back. Buttigieg has been drawing crowds of 2,000 and 3,000 in some of these states. It was a tough decision to take a step back from that and say, I don't have a path forward. Somebody else might. I need to, at least get out of the way, if not throw my support behind someone else.
And so, David, why not make an endorsement tonight then?
Yeah, Anna, I think he will make an endorsement at some point soon. We'll see what he says in this speech tonight. Clearly, the sooner he does it, the more value it has, and the more he's able to sort of parlay that into future goodwill, either with one of the candidates he might endorse or with the party in general. But this is already a pretty big turnaround from where we were just 2 days ago, as you pointed out. And so I think now we're in a situation where he and his team are going to figure out what it gets them to either endorse a Biden and maybe send some of his voters that way, as well as position himself in the party, as Ron was saying, as the heir apparent in that moderate lane, or whether it makes sense to see what happens on Super Tuesday. We do still see a situation where Biden is surging out of South Carolina, but Senator Sanders is still the front runner in this race right now. We'll know a lot more in 2 days.
Okay, everyone, please stand by. We are going to keep an eye on that podium. You saw where the setup is there in South Bend, Indiana, where we expect Former Mayor Pete Buttigieg to make his announcement tonight in the next 15 minutes or so. We'll keep an eye on that. And one person looking to gain out of Pete Buttigieg's exit is former Vice President Joe Biden. We are learning new details about contacts between Biden and Buttigieg today. Plus, also breaking this hour, New York's governor announcing the state's first case of the coronavirus. The patient having recently returned from Iran. The governor saying that the patient is isolated this hour. We'll bring you more information as it comes in. Stay with us.
We made USAA insurance for busy veterans like Kate. So when her car got hit, she didn't waste any time. She filed the claim on her USAA app and said, that was easy. USAA, what you're made of, we're made for.
My body is truly powerful.
I have the power to lower my blood sugar and A1C.
Because I can still make my own insulin. And Trulicity activates my body to release it, like it's supposed to.
Trulicity is for people with type 2 diabetes. It's not insulin. I take it once a week. It starts acting in my body from the first dose.
Trulicity isn't for people with type 1 diabetes or diabetic ketoacidosis. Don't take Trulicity if you're allergic to it, you or your family have medullary thyroid cancer, or have multiple endocrine neoplasia syndrome type 2. Stop Trulicity and call your doctor right away if you have an allergic reaction, a lump or swelling in your neck, or severe stomach pain. Serious side effects may include pancreatitis. Taking Trulicity with a sulfonylurea or insulin increases low blood sugar risk. Side effects include nausea, diarrhea, vomiting, belly pain, and decreased appetite, which lead to dehydration and may worsen kidney problems.
I have it within me to lower my A1C.
Ask your doctor about
never come down. Oh, stay up on that rise, stay up on that rise, we'll never come down. Mama said, don't give up, it's a little complicated. All tied up, no more love, and I'd hate to see you waiting. They say it's all been done, but they haven't seen the best of me. So I got one more run, and it's gonna be a sight to see. Something greater, go make a legacy, manifest destiny. Back in the days we wanted everything, Mama said, burn your biographies, rewrite your history, light up your wildest dreams, museum victories. Every day we wanted everything.
We are continuing to follow our breaking news. Multiple sources confirming that former South Bend, Indiana Mayor Pete Buttigieg is ending his campaign for the presidency tonight. And we are waiting to hear from Buttigieg himself in South Bend, Indiana. He told reporters he'll make his announcement In the next few minutes, at half past the hours when we expect it, we will bring you that announcement live when it happens. Meantime, his fellow Democratic candidates are reacting on Twitter. We have this from Massachusetts Senator Elizabeth Warren. Thank you, Pete Buttigieg. I know you'll continue giving back and serving our country for many years to come. Michael Bloomberg tweeting, Pete Buttigieg ran a strong campaign that inspired audiences and made history. His dedication to serving our nation as a mayor and veteran reflected a love of country I deeply admire. Our party is stronger and our nation is better because of his run. And this from billionaire businessman Tom Steyer, who ended his own run for the White House just last night. Pete Buttigieg brought a fresh perspective and sense of optimism to the race. His call for inclusivity is laudable. As the first openly gay candidate to mount a major bid, he has proven we aren't limited by who we love. Mayor Pete has a bright future and will help us win the era. I want to get to CNN's Rebecca Buck in Virginia, where Joe Biden is rallying his supporters this evening. Rebecca, any mention of Pete Buttigieg from Joe Biden so far?
No mention yet, Anna, but he did rally his supporters here in Virginia. As you can see, they are now filing out. The former vice president wrapped his remarks just a few minutes ago. His message was what we would expect after South Carolina. He feels that this is a campaign that is on the rise and that he is well positioned on Super Tuesday in states like Virginia and elsewhere to make the most of this moment. But there's no question, Anna, that Buttigieg's decision to drop out of the race at this moment, at this juncture, is going to be potentially a very important boost for Joe Biden. What we know at this hour, according to CNN's reporting, is that they have traded voicemails. They have not yet been able to connect the former vice president and the former South Bend mayor, but they are trying to get in touch. Meantime, their staff have had conversations. We are not expecting an endorsement this evening from Buttigieg, but we have heard what he has said about Bernie Sanders and his rejection of that path for the Democratic Party. So read between the lines, and you can see that certainly Mayor Buttigieg supports a Biden-like path for the Democratic Party. We'll have to see if he comes out and endorses him, but certainly the Biden campaign tonight feeling very good about this development. We're going to wait to see what the vice president has to say. Perhaps he's waiting for Buttigieg first to make his remarks in South Bend. But the other wild card, of course, Anna, is Michael Bloomberg on Super Tuesday. We don't know what his impact will be and if he will now draw some of those supporters from Pete Buttigieg, or Elizabeth Warren could be the beneficiary as well. But Biden feeling buoyant today, and his supporters as well here in Norfolk, Virginia. Anna.
All right, Rebecca Buck, thank you. We'll check back. Again, we're awaiting an announcement from Pete Buttigieg in South Bend, Indiana, any moment. Let's go back to our panel. Jeff, you have some new information, I hear?
I do. I'm told that Pete Buttigieg is speaking with his donors, his top donors of his campaign right now. The moment he landed in South Bend, Indiana, he jumped on a conference call with some of the top donors, and he did tell them that he does indeed plan to get out of this race, as we've been reporting for the last hour or so, and he did thank them for their support, and and he did not mention that his future plans, what if he plans to endorse anyone or not going forward. But it is expected that he is telling donors to follow their own hearts here in terms of turning their support to another candidate. So that is key. Joe Biden needs the financial support from Buttigieg supporters if they're so inclined to do so. So that is key. Anna, we're also learning tonight that former President Barack Obama spoke with Joe Biden after the South Carolina primary. And he told him that, look, he does plan to stay on the sidelines of this race still. He does not plan to offer an endorsement. He believes his best role is as a unifying figure for this party. So he does not plan to tip the scales. Talking to one confidant of the former president who has spoken to him in the past several hours, this person tells me that they also believe an endorsement could backfire. They do not believe that it could actually have a big effect. When the president was in office, he did not have a strong track record of winning endorsements in races that he offered endorsements. Of course, he endorsed Hillary Clinton, and that didn't work out so well. So he is planning on staying on the sidelines, as he's been doing for some time here. He believes his role will be a unifying one, trying to bring the party together whenever this primary fight is finally over on it.
And so, Bakari, what do you make of that phone call between the former vice president and Barack Obama last night, especially given Barack Obama has been really out of the spotlight when it comes to this 2020 race?
I think that we're going to have a very rough and tumble road to figuring out who the nominee is going to be. And Barack Obama's #1 job in this entire primary cycle is to bring this party together. He still is the most popular figure. And I know that no one who supports Bernie Sanders and no one who supports Joe Biden wants necessarily for that path to be altered. I think that his job is to bring the party together, and I think that's what he's focused on. In regards to Pete getting out the race tonight, and I was just looking at an article by Jeff Zeleny in another lifetime about John Edwards, who was actually in a stronger position at the time than even Pete was now, even though he was running third. And John Edwards, with all his faults and failures, I'm not dare comparing the two, but he was running stronger at that time, and he too got out the race, similar to Pete, because he acknowledged that that race wasn't his, that history would be made. And so I think that what people have to realize is that right now it's a two-person race. It's a Bernie Sanders versus Joe Biden race. And you have two egos. It's two people and two egos. Those egos being Elizabeth Warren and Michael Bloomberg. And they're going to have to make a decision about what they do going forward. But all hats off to Pete Buttigieg, and I expect Barack Obama when the time is necessary. I'm tired of people asking Barack and Michelle for something because they gave 8 years of their lives to us. But when the time is right, they will come off the sidelines and do what is necessary.
Ron, play this out for us as we await the words from Buttigieg. With him out, what does the road look like ahead for Biden?
Well, I mean, the big question for Biden, obviously, is whether he can consolidate more of the voters who are skeptical of Sanders. And we don't really know how big that universe ultimately is. What we've seen so far is that Bernie Sanders has been very strong with 3 or 4 different groups of voters. He's dominated among young voters. He's dominated among the most liberal. He's had a significant advantage among Latino voters and a measurable but not as big advantage among blue-collar white voters. What we've seen from Biden really is not much on anything except his performance among African Americans in South Carolina and Nevada. And then in South Carolina, he improved among those white-collar white voters. Biden ultimately has to expand his coalition if this is not going to be a very temporary spring, because we are moving even if he gets through Super Tuesday and Michael Bloomberg is marginalized and ultimately decides after spending $500 million he didn't get enough support to continue, even if Biden gets his footing back and can reduce this to a one-on-one race with Bernie Sanders, if he doesn't improve among those working-class white voters, those Midwestern states that are looming in the middle of March, like Illinois, Ohio, Michigan, and Missouri, could be tough places for him. So there is an opportunity for him. Clearly, Sanders is a plurality, not a majority frontrunner. The party is not consolidated around him after his victories in New Hampshire and Nevada. There's still a lot of resistance, but it is still to be proven that Biden can expand his coalition to the point where he can go toe-to-toe and ultimately end up in Milwaukee with a comparable number of delegates as Bernie Sanders.
And so what do you think, David, the road looks like for Sanders?
Oh, I think Sanders right now can play that front-runner role. He's got a double-digit lead in polling in Texas. He's ahead by a few points, several points in California. Those are the 2 biggest Super Tuesday prizes. It's tighter in the other bigger states, Virginia and North Carolina. But if he can go with where the polling is right now, I think he will still be in the driver's seat in this race. I agree with Ron that Biden has to expand his coalition quickly. I agree with Bakari that this is narrowing down quickly to a 2-person race, maybe with Michael Bloomberg as a wild card. But we're going to know a lot more after Super Tuesday. And I think that, yes, Biden made a statement over this weekend with a commanding win in South Carolina, but we need to know more about what he can do outside of African-American voters, outside of voters in southern, more moderate to conservative states, before we say that he's pulled a pace with Senator Sanders, who just has run a very effective campaign, even though a lot of the Democratic Party is still wary of where they're going with a far-left candidate.
And Abby, as David just brought up, Bloomberg hasn't been on the ballot yet. He has spent more than $500 million already on advertising. He gets in on Tuesday. What impact could he have?
Well, he's already had a huge impact in terms of really fracturing the non-Bernie Sanders vote in this race, and it's really upped the pressure for Biden to either strengthen his campaign or for the other candidates to make some decisions about how they are going to play this. Are they going to continue to be in the race hoping that something good will happen for them, or will they step aside and sort of narrow expand Biden's window of opportunity to kind of compete with both Sanders and with Michael Bloomberg? One of the other factors is that it also puts financial pressure on a lot of these campaigns. Michael Bloomberg has unlimited resources, has already spent more than $500 million on this race, and several of the other candidates have staked their rationale on staying in the race on their ability to raise money. Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren raising money from grassroots donors. They both announced really massive fundraising hauls in February. $46 million for Sanders and $20-something million for Warren. Biden is trailing behind. So, I mean, I think that there is a sense now in which everyone in this race has to decide, do I have a real path to go forward, and do I want to play a spoiler role? I mean, Bloomberg is not going to face any sort of financial pressures to get out of the race, so the other candidates have to decide if they're going to continue to soak up grassroots money, traditional money, making it more difficult for other candidates who have a bigger path to do that. And I think that that's one of the reasons, that's one of the factors that played into to Pete Buttigieg's decision to drop out tonight. You know, his campaign actually had set a $13 million fundraising goal before Super Tuesday. On Saturday, they sent an update to supporters saying they had raised $8 million. Now, that sounds like a lot of money, but it's really not that much money. So they'd already started to experience a little bit of that slowdown in how much money they're able to bring in. And when you're looking at Super Tuesday, you need tens of millions of dollars to go up on the air on a good day. You need, tens of millions of dollars and then some to go up on the air and compete with Michael Bloomberg, given that he's already dumped, $100 million, $200 million in these states altogether.
And I just want to let us all know that we are awaiting Pete Buttigieg to speak any moment. We were told around 8:30, so it really should be any minute. I might have to interrupt if he takes the podium there. We have heard the crowd chanting, Pete, Pete, Pete. Bakari, does it bother you, and I talked about this a little bit with Andrew Yang at the top of the hour, does it bother you that here we are as, the contests get underway and the field diversity is getting narrower and narrower, especially, now Pete Buttigieg dropping out. He was the youngest in the field. He obviously is gay, and we have hardly any ethnic diversity left. You are a part of this party. What does that tell you?
Well, just so you understand, Anna, we have one billionaire left in the race, so we're not losing all the diversity. I mean, we had two billionaires, now we have one. No, I mean, I think that a lot of people are downtrodden and distraught and just trying to figure out where they're going to find themselves in this process. I mean, do you want to, which 75-plus-year-old white male do you want is the question that people are asking themselves at this time. So yes, we are having a crisis of diversity in our party, and Pete Buttigieg was a ray of light. I mean, there's no question about it. I mean, and not only was he brilliant beyond anyone's belief, but he represented so much of the future of who we want to be. He and his husband Chasten represented the future that we thought we could have in this country. And as we see them go on stage now, I mean, it was an amazing moment that for them to be winning the Iowa caucus. I keep going back to that moment.
Hey, Bakari, let's just stop and pause for a minute. Forgive me for interrupting, but let's listen to
Sure.
Pete Buttigieg's husband. This is Chasten Buttigieg.
I love you. It's good to be home. Thank you, everyone, for coming tonight. About 1.5 years ago, my husband came home from work and told me, well, he asked me, what do you think about running for president? And I laughed, not at him, but at life, because Life gave me some interesting experiences on my way to find Pete. And after falling in love with Pete, Pete got me to believe in myself again. And I told Pete to run because I knew there were other kids sitting out there in this country who needed to believe in themselves too. Yes, we did. Together, we did. This campaign was built on an idea of hope, an idea of inclusion, an idea of addition rather than subtraction, about bringing people together, about looking your neighbor in the eye and saying, maybe we don't agree on everything, but let's agree on this. We've got one shot, and that's what we did. We went out there with that one shot, and we gave it everything we had because it is time for every single person in this country to look to the White House and know that that institution stands for them, that they belong in this country. It has been an honor and a privilege to share my husband with the rest of this country. You're so welcome. And I am so proud that the same person you saw on the debate stage, the same person you saw at a town hall, is the same person that comes home to me every night. For those of you who know me, you know I'm usually not short with words, but tonight I will be. It's an honor to come home and to bring home the person I love so dearly. So please help me welcome to the stage my dear husband, the man I love so much, Mayor Pete Buttigieg.
Thank you so much.
We love you!
It's so good to be in South Bend. Sometimes the longest way around really is the shortest way home. Here we are. In the last few years, America has faced enormous challenges, from an economy in transition to a climate on the brink, to a president sowing chaos and discord across the very country he is responsible for uniting. And for many Americans, these challenges have amounted to a call to action. And so, like so many others, I thought deeply about what I could do to make a difference, what I could do to make myself useful. And it was in that spirit, with your help, that a year ago, we launched our campaign for the American presidency. We began this unlikely journey with a staff of 4 in a cramped office right here in South Bend, Indiana, right down Washington Street. No big email lists, no personal fortune. Hardly anybody knew my name, and even fewer could pronounce it. But South Bend showed everybody what to do. First name Mayor, last name Pete, so nobody got confused. But by every conventional wisdom, by every historical measure, we were never supposed to get anywhere at all. And then, as I said, that roller coaster February night a few weeks ago when Iowa shocked the nation, along that way, an improbable hope became an undeniable reality. In a field in which more than 24 Democratic candidates ran for president, senators and governors, billionaires, a former vice president, we achieved a top 4 finish in each of the first 4 states to hold nominating contests, and we made history winning those Iowa caucuses. And all of that, it came about thanks to your support. Thanks to the power of this campaign's vision in your hands. It proved that Americans really are hungry for a new kind of politics, rooted in the values that we share. In cities, in suburbs, in rural communities, in crowds that spilled out of venues from Salt Lake City to Raleigh to Arlington, we saw Americans ready to meet a new era of challenge with a new generation of leadership. We found countless Americans ready to support a middle-class millennial mayor from the industrial Midwest, not in spite of that experience, but because of it, eager to get Washington to start working like our best-run communities and towns. In a divided nation, we saw fellow Democrats join with independents and, yes, some of those future former Republicans to choose a different politics, to choose a politics defined not by who we push away, but by how many we can call to our side. And we sent a message to every kid out there wondering if whatever marks them out as different means they are somehow destined to be less than. To see that someone who once felt that exact same way can become a leading American presidential candidate with his husband at his side. We got into this race for a reason. We got into this race in order to defeat the current president and in order to usher in a new kind of politics. And that meant guiding our campaign by the values we like to call the rules of the road. Respect, belonging, truth, teamwork, boldness, responsibility, substance, discipline, excellence, and joy. And every decision we made was guided by these values. One of those values is truth, and today is a moment of truth. After a year of going everywhere, meeting everyone, defying every expectation, seeking every vote, the truth is that the path has narrowed to a close for our candidacy, if not for our cause. And another of those values is responsibility. And we have a responsibility to consider the effect of remaining in this race any further. Our goal has always been to help unify Americans to defeat Donald Trump and to win the era for our values. And so we must recognize that at this point in the race, the best way to keep faith with those goals and ideals is to step aside and help bring our party and our country together. So tonight, I am making the difficult decision to suspend my campaign for the presidency. I will no longer seek to be the 2020 Democratic nominee for president, but I will do everything in my power to ensure that we have a new Democratic president come January. We have to, because every time this president brings partisan politics into the management of a deadly serious pandemic or purges officials who honored their oaths of office by telling the truth, or cloaks in religious language an administration whose actions harm the least among us, the sick and the poor, the outcast and the stranger. We are reminded just how urgent it is that we change who is in the White House. We cannot afford to miss this moment. With every passing day, I am more and more convinced that the only way we will defeat Trump and Trumpism is with a new politics that gathers people together. We need leadership to heal a divided nation, not drive us further apart. We need a broad-based agenda that can truly deliver for the American people, not one that gets lost in ideology. We need an approach strong enough not only to win the White House, but to hold the House, win the Senate, and send Mitch McConnell into retirement. And that broad and inclusive politics, that is the politics that we have attempted to model through this campaign. That, I believe, is the way forward for our eventual nominee. So I urge everyone who supported me to continue in the cause of ensuring that we bring change to the White House and working to win the absolutely critical down-ballot races playing out across the country this year. There is simply too much at stake to retreat to the sidelines at a time like this. And as this contest gives way to the season of weekly elections and delegate math, it is more important than ever that we hold to what this is actually all about. Politics is not about the horse race, not about the debate stage or a precinct count in a spreadsheet. It is about real people's lives. It is about our paychecks, our families, our futures. We can and must put the everyday lives of Americans who have been overlooked for so long back at the center of our politics. And every story that became part of this campaign helped show us why and how we do just that. Yeah. Yeah. Now, politics is about people, and that is especially true of the people who touch this campaign. To my competitors in a historically diverse field, those who have stepped aside and those still competing, thank you for demonstrating what public service can be. To the people of South Bend, this river city we love so much, thank you for keeping me honest and thank you for keeping me going. And to our Pete for America family, I cannot express how grateful I am to every staffer, every volunteer, every supporter who believed in what we were building. You walked in neighborhoods on hot summer days and drove on icy roads in the wintertime. You filmed and tweeted and coded and crunched numbers. You built relationships and you built events. You lit up offices and you filled high school gyms with equipment and then with people and then with cheers in the name of our values, freedom and security and democracy. Our contributors, so many of you dug deep to fuel this campaign. Nearly 1 million grassroots supporters who sacrificed financially so that this message of hope and belonging could reach every corner of this country. Thank you for what you gave to make this possible. Online, in person, with family and with friends and with total strangers, you shared your personal stories and you made the life of this campaign part of your own. What you did and the way you did it was how we could show, not just tell, the kind of campaign we could be and the kind of country we will build. You made me proud every single day. And last, I want to thank my own family. My mom, who not only helped raise me, but put her love of language into work, answering letters for the campaign. My father, who left us just as this was all getting underway, but who's very much here and part of this effort. And to the guy who took a chance on a first date with somebody all the way in South Bend, Indiana, and never looked back, Chasten, I can't wait to spend the rest of my life with you. I know that as this campaign ends, there comes disappointment that we won't continue. But I hope that everyone who has been part of this in any way knows that the campaign that you have built and the community that you have created is only the beginning of the change that we are going to make together. My faith teaches that the world is not divided into good people and bad people, that all of us are capable of good and bad things. Today, more than ever, politics matters because leaders can call out either what is best in us or what is worst in us, can draw us either to our better or to our worst selves. Politics at its worst is ugly, but at its best, politics can lift us up. It is not just policy making, it is moral, it is soulcraft. That is why we were in this. Earlier today, we were in Selma, marching in commemoration of the Civil Rights Movement on the Edmund Pettus Bridge, where I was humbled to walk in the symbolic and the literal shadows of heroes who 55 years ago made America more of a democracy than it had ever been by their blood and by their courage. And seeing those moral giants made me ask what we might achieve in the years now at hand, how we might live up to the greatest moral traditions of political change in this country. It made me wonder how the 2020s will be remembered when I am an old man. I firmly believe that in these years, in our time, we can and will make American life and politics more like what it could be. Not just more wise and more prosperous, but more equitable and more just and more decent. Think about how proud of our time we could be if we really did act to make it so that no one has to take to the streets in America for a decent wage because one job is enough in the United States of America, whether you went to college or not. Imagine how proud we would be to be the generation that saw the day when your race has no bearing on your health or your wealth or your relationship with law enforcement in the United States. What if we could be the ones to deliver the day when our teachers are honored a little more like soldiers and paid a little more like doctors? What if we were the ones who rallied this nation to see to it that climate would be no barrier to our children's opportunities in life? The chance to do that is in our hands. That is the hope in our hearts. That is the fire in our bellies. That is the future we believe in. A country that really does empower every American to thrive and a future where everyone belongs. Thank you for sharing that vision. Thank you for helping us spread that hope. Thank you so much. Let's move on together. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
And there you have it, Pete Buttigieg ending his 2020 presidential campaign. Everyone is back with me now. Bakari, I'll start with you since I cut you off to go to his remarks. What's your reaction to his speech?
That speech was awesome. That was my mom just texted me while we were sitting here. My mom said that was presidential timber. So she enjoyed it. That was an awesome speech. That's why everybody fell in love with Pete Buttigieg. Something that just quickly, I know we're being brief, but I also want to just point out the timing of this. I completely stepped on Michael Bloomberg. I know Bloomberg had that 3-minute ad, and it was about coronavirus or something like that. But Pete Buttigieg is the story tonight. He's the story tomorrow. And I think that the person who benefits the most from Pete Buttigieg being this story is going to be Joe Biden. So we'll see what happens. But this race has a long way to go. And hopefully Amy Klobuchar, Elizabeth Warren, and Mike Bloomberg take a lead from Pete Buttigieg, and so that you have to put the country first.
David Swerdlick, your thoughts on what we just heard?
Yeah, it was a well-done speech. He got out at the right time. None of the candidates in this race was an Obama. Each of them had a little piece of Obama. Mayor Buttigieg's piece was that he delivered oratory in that even Steven baritone. All that was really missing there was don't boo, vote. And I think that's how people will remember him. His supporters were chanting 2024. Of course, if he runs at that time, Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez will be 36 at that time. You could see something like that as a Democratic primary, and this same moderate versus left type clash among Democrats, depending on what happens on Super Tuesday next year and in the years to come.
And Ron Brownstein, he said too much is at stake to retreat to the sidelines. Why do you think he did not endorse Joe Biden at this time? Do you expect him to?
One reason is what Andrew Yang said. I mean, you want to be respectful to your supporters at this moment. You don't immediately want to put them into something else. But he gets two bites at the apple this way. I mean, he made very clear tonight that he does not think Bernie Sanders' direction is the right direction for the Democratic Party or a winning direction. And that'll be part of the story tonight and tomorrow. And then if he does, in fact, endorse later, he will get to make that point again a second time. So like many other things he did, this was both smooth and shrewd. And he's certainly someone with a future ahead of him, though, precisely in the way that David says, potentially in an ideological conflict over the direction of the party through the 2020s.
You mentioned his dig at Bernie Sanders. It's interesting because as he was speaking, Bernie Sanders also weighed in. I have the transcript. He says, tonight, I just welcome all of his supporters into our movement and to urge them into joining us for real change in this country. Abby, do you see his supporters potentially getting behind Bernie Sanders?
I don't think it's out of the question, but I certainly think that what Pete Buttigieg was trying to tell his supporters tonight was that he thinks that his view of politics in America is actually different from Senator Sanders' view. And I spoke to an aide tonight who said that he wanted to center his vision for politics in America, that he believes that the American people want to move away from a kind of divisive politics. And the implication there is that politics, that kind of division would only be sort of extended by Bernie Sanders. So I do think it's pretty clear where Buttigieg was leading people. Here, the question is, what do voters do? That's an individual decision. And I just want to point out one other thing. He talked about what he did this morning. He started the day in Atlanta meeting with Jimmy Carter. He went to Selma, Alabama to mark Bloody Sunday with the other candidates. And talking to his aides, I asked, why didn't he do this last night? Why did he do this today? And one of them said, he wanted to have those experiences. It was all part of this process of processing what he needed to do here tonight. And I think you heard him speaking and reflecting on that tonight. And I think it really just, it kind of clarified the need to kind of put country first. And I think that's what his aides are saying led him to this moment.
Okay, all of you, thank you so much for being with us. It is an historic night. It was an historic candidacy. But again, Pete Buttigieg now out of the 2020 race. Thank you all. I do have to bring up some other breaking news we're following tonight here at CNN. A second person has died of the coronavirus here in the U.S. in Washington state. This latest death is a man in his 70s who was suffering from underlying health conditions, we are told. This is according to the Seattle and King County Public Health Department. We'll, of course, stay on top of this story as we continue here on CNN. I'm Ana Cabrera. We have a brand new episode of The Race for the White House right now. Good night.
You're the accidental president, leader of a nation in mourning. Now, you've got to make the tough calls. Confront your demons. Outwit your enemies. prove you've got what it takes to be the leader of the free world.
President's car is now turning onto Elm Street, and it will be only a matter of minutes before he arrives at the trademark.